heard pop, 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 and everybody yelled, "He's got a gun, head for cover."
A gunman targets Republican members of Congress as they prepare for a charity baseball game. Now the attack is bringing new calls to back off heated political rhetoric. Good morning and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. Several Texans got caught up in the big story of the week when a gunman opened fire on several Republican congressmen. It happened Wednesday morning on a baseball field in Alexandria, Virginia, where the GOP congressional baseball team was practicing for their annual charity game. The gunman fired dozens of shots with a high-powered semi-automatic rifle. Congressman Steve Scalise of Louisiana was critically wounded. Two others were also hit by gunfire. Scalise's security detail returned fire, eventually hitting and killing the gunman. 4 Texas congressmen were at the practice. They include Roger Williams, who coaches the team and represents parts of Central Texas. Joe Barton from North Texas manages the team. Mike Conaway plays on the team. He represents part of the Hill Country. And Kevin Brady from the Houston area was at the practice but left minutes before the shooting began. Video from the scene showed Congressman Williams on a stretcher. He suffered a leg injury when he dove for cover in a dugout. Williams staffer Zach Barth, who's a UT grad, described being hit by one of the bullets.
I was pinned down in right field, and at that point I got struck in the leg and made a run for it. I was running for my life, got into the dugout, and I was bleeding pretty badly, but I was really just trying to keep my head down.
Investigators did not reveal a motive for the attack, but the shooter's social media profile indicates he strongly disliked Republican policies and opposed President Trump. Hours after the shooting, members of Congress met on Capitol Hill to hear from House leaders and pray for Representative Scalise. Speaker of the House Paul Ryan expressed the shock and anguish of everyone in Congress and called for unity.
I ask each of you to join me to resolve to come together, to lift each other up, and to show the country, to show the world that we are one house, the people's house, united in our humanity. It is that humanity which will win the day, and it always will.
One Texas Democrat, Representative Lloyd Doggett, praised Ryan's statement on the House floor and condemned people who are already bringing politics into the situation.
This is an attack on one of us, is an attack on all of us, as the Speaker said, and that needs to be the attitude we have going forward. In many other countries, we see political debate degenerating into violence, and that is something all of us have a responsibility to work against. We can have very vigorous political debate without it becoming violent debate.
The last time a member of Congress was shot was back in 2011. In January of that year, Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords was shot in the head outside a grocery store while meeting with constituents. She has permanent brain damage that affects her speech to this day. She resigned from Congress a year later. After Giffords' shooting, there were renewed calls for unity and ramping down the angry political rhetoric. We all know how that worked out. Within hours of this latest shooting, people all across the political spectrum began casting blame, citing real and supposed violent rhetoric from Democrats and Republicans. The attack on the congressman and ongoing threats of violence raised new questions about security for state lawmakers.
I haven't thought about it. I won't let it get between me and my constituents. I'm going to go to events that I'm invited to.
We'll hear from one state representative about the steps law enforcement takes to protect the people who represent you. And Governor Abbott pulls out his veto pen. How the results will affect proposals aimed to help people here in Austin. Governor Greg Abbott announced Thursday that he vetoed 50 bills passed by both the House and the Senate before they left Austin last month. Among them, a bill to keep the Women's Health Advisory Committee running for another 2 years. Governor Abbott says the temporary committee served its purpose. Austin State Representative Donna Howard said the bill unanimously passed the Senate and passed the House twice. She says the governor's veto jeopardizes, quote, the health and safety of women across the state. Governor Abbott's vetoes hit close to home for one local lawmaker. State Representative Celia Israel spoke with our Shannon Wolfson about her bills killed by the governor and her thoughts on the upcoming special session.
Joining us now is State Representative Celia Israel, a Democrat who represents Austin. Welcome. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Shannon.
A lot of folks still looking ahead to the special session, as I know you are as well.
Yeah.
You have heard the governor say what he wants in his call. What are you expecting in the special, and what are your priorities?
Well, I wish my priorities were in sync with the governor's priorities. I always say I wish I was Queen of Texas, and if I was the Queen, I wouldn't be having a special session. We had an opportunity to deal with, the only thing we really had to deal with in a special was what we didn't address in the regular, and that was the sunset bills. The Senate had an opportunity to do those. So I wish that we didn't have to upset family vacations and people's business. This is a part-time legislature. So what I'm expecting is more tension. These are divisive issues, they're controversial issues. I don't know what to expect, and I've talked to a lot of my colleagues, Republican and Democrat, and we don't know what to expect that we'll get done in 30 days that we did not get done in 140 days.
You mentioned the tension. Certainly we saw it at the end of the session. A fight almost broke out on the floor.
Yeah.
Very unusual. Do you think those tensions will simmer with this time in between, or are you expecting more tension?
Well, I take a deep breath as you ask me that, because it was the most emotional session that many of us had seen. I talked to my colleagues who have been there for dozens of sessions, and they said this is the hardest we've ever seen it. And it was hard because, yet again, we lead with God, gays, and guns. And I don't think that most Texans want us to be talking about that. Who gets to go into whose bathroom? These are imaginary crimes. It stokes fear where there need not be fear. So I'm concerned that those tensions that we saw in the regular will still be there. The makeup is the same. It's the same 150 members in the House, the same 31 senators, it's the same committee structure. No one has changed my mind to say suddenly it's okay to be a little bit discriminatory. So I'm concerned that the tension is still going to be there. Perhaps the only blessing is that we've only got 30 days, maybe less. When the governor calls a 30-day session, that doesn't mean that we have to meet for all 30 days. You know, it could be a 15-day session and we stare at the Senate stares at us, and we go home.
Looking at that so-called bathroom bill, that is something Governor Abbott put on the list of things that he wants you all to discuss. It seems like a tougher task now. What do you think about that?
It pains me to know that that tension that we talked about is going to happen. It looks like again. It pains me because there are those who say, well, it's not going to affect. It won't affect the Dallas Cowboy Stadium. It's just going to affect schools. Well, our principals and our teachers and parents of transgender kids are dealing with that right now. I trust them to do the best thing that they can for those kids. I don't trust a legislature that's driven by scoring political points on the backs of transgender children. And tears were shed, emotions were very raw over this issue, and it was not necessary. So again, my opinion remains the same, that I think my constituents want me to work on traffic and congestion, air quality, water quality. I represent North Austin, Northwest Austin, and Pflugerville, squished between the urban core and the high growth areas of Round Rock. I would love nothing better than to just talk about transportation and work on those issues for my constituents.
You have a community forum, I know, scheduled in the coming week with a few other local representatives. Tell us a little bit about that. Who can come, and really what are you expecting?
Well, we found, and when I say we, I mean my other Democratic colleagues, in the post-Trump era, we found a lot of energy, a lot of people who wanted an assignment. Tell me what to do. What can I do to get involved? So we had a community forum, all of us, as session was beginning, and we had about 1,000 people show up at the Millennium Center. Standing room only, bleachers were full, room was full. So it was heartening. I remembered that day during the tougher days of the legislative session. So we decided to do it again and let people know what were our priorities, what were our hopes and dreams, and what can they do again, not only in a special session, but help us as we get closer to election time.
So this week we have talked a lot about potential risks for lawmakers. These are divisive times. They're very partisan. There's a lot of rhetoric coming from both sides, and really the threat to lawmakers. Has this affected your ability at all to reach your constituents?
No, I haven't thought about it. I won't let it get between me and my constituents. I'm going to go to events that I'm invited to. I'm going to, you know, I'm a lawmaker that wants people to know who I am, what I'm about, who is your state representative, what are we doing for you or to you, whatever your perspective. So I don't want to endanger that by being afraid of where I'm going. There have been times when DPS has actually contacted me because I'm a member of the LGBT community to say, hey, there's this rally going on. Do you want an escort? Are you okay? So DPS is on top of things. They ask us before we ask them. In the wake of the Dallas shootings, we went to a memorial, for example, on the Capitol grounds, and they wanted to know who was attending, and they, in a non-uniform, were helping me just to be a reassuring person there. So I very much appreciate DPS, and I can understand where our congressmen were coming from when they spoke about the Capitol Police, because we know they're there, we know they care for us, and they're doing their job, and we appreciate them.
Governor Abbott just released his list of vetoes.
Yeah.
Anything on that concerns you? Or?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
I had a couple of really good bills on there on that list. One was a Capital Metro bill that would just allow them to save money with short-term small financing for small projects. So instead of owning something, now they'll have to continue to rent something. And then the other one was a small bill that would have saved rural counties money. If there was a runoff election in a rural county, why spend money for precinct judges and locations for having the election when you could just do a mail-in ballot for a runoff? It was agreed upon by the Republican and the Democratic Party, and I was shocked and disappointed, because that was a real money saver. And our county officials really like process and procedure when it comes to elections, and they were looking forward to having this bill as one of their tools. So I'm not in charge.
Representative Zelia Israel, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks for the questions.
One of Governor Abbott's vetoes in particular hits Austin and the issue of affordable housing. House Bill 3281 passed with bipartisan support, but the governor said directing money to select projects effectively increased the tax burden on other property owners. He called it, quote, holding back in the free market. Local Representative Eddie Rodriguez fired back. He says the governor did this simply because he doesn't like local control. Rodriguez said the governor was posturing for a future campaign. This veto comes as a new report from Realty Austin shows the average price for a single-family home in Austin rose to nearly $400,000. Critics say rising cost priced too many people out of Austin. As we gear up for a special session, we're learning more about how Texans feel about our state leaders. We'll look closer at a new poll and what it could mean for the session ahead. A new poll is giving us a closer look at how Texans view their top state leaders heading into a special session. The University of Texas Texas Tribune poll shows 45% of Texans approve of Governor Abbott's job performance. 38% disapprove. That may not sound great, but it's a lot better than how Texans view Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick or House Speaker Joe Straus. Patrick has just 34% approval. Straus stands at 25%. Both have disapproval ratings higher than their approval. Joining us now for perspective, Andrea Zielinski, the Austin Bureau reporter for the Houston Chronicle, and Jim Henson from the Texas Politics Project. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
So the polling that your group did, was it a shock to you the way people look at our state leaders right now?
You know, not really. I think that we've seen a lot of stability in these numbers. There was a little something for everybody in this. I think above all, Governor Abbott's doing very well among Republicans. There was a lot of kind of chat in the Capitol about whether Governor Abbott had been present enough, whether he had delivered. And I think at least as far as the Republican electorate is concerned, his ratings are still very strong. He's the only member, he's the only of the big three in positive territory among the general population. Among Republicans, he's got about an 80% job approval rating. Among Tea Party identifiers, even stronger. It's not as if the lieutenant governor is suffering. As far as he's concerned, his name recognition went up. Fewer people don't know who he is, which is always the challenger for the lieutenant governor vis-a-vis the governor. But his negatives also went up a little bit in the overall, among the overall population. And among Republicans, he's well liked. His approval rating was in the high 60s, but still not as high as Governor Abbott's.
You know, people always pay attention to Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, but you know, Speaker Joe Straus, he's quite a force in the legislature, but not elected by everyone statewide. You've been writing about him a little bit lately. Seemed like he went up against a lot of the things that his Republican leadership counterparts were talking about as well.
Yeah, he was really strong in his criticism of the Senate president or the lieutenant governor, particularly when it came to education reform. The House had worked really hard to come up with a solution on that, and the Senate didn't want to go through with it. So he had some pretty strong words comparing this next special session to a pile of manure, and trying to dig through that to try to find what good can the House come up with during the special session.
What does it say when the political leaders of the different chambers really don't agree as much as you might think they would because they're from the same party? I mean, what does that do for the political rhetoric?
Well, it does mean that there's a lot of tension, right? So you have different factions of both chambers, and particularly the chambers themselves, already have this built-up tension and friction, which means it's going to be a lot harder to cut through that in order to come up with policies that the electorate are going to think are sound.
So the veto list just came out. Governor Abbott, he got rid of 50 things, I guess, said no to them. Were any of those a big surprise, Jim?
Well, I mean, I think nothing was a huge surprise, but I think what was interesting about the veto list was the fact that it was very strategically engineered, which we would expect from the governor. They vetoed some things that they want to revisit in the special session, like this, much discussed tree ordinance. They also, targeted some measures at some members, it would seem, that they were unhappy with. So, for example, San Antonio State Representative Lyle Larson has a piece in Trib Talk today talking about the governor's dislike of his ethics legislation, which didn't survive the session, but basically leveling a charge at the governor that this was punishment, that he punished Larson by vetoing several of his measures. So I think it really goes back to what you guys were talking about a moment ago. The legislature right now is something of a war of all against all. Depending on where you're standing, the axes of conflict look different. Sometimes it's the House versus the Senate. Sometimes it's kind of the right versus the far right. Other times it's one of the three leaders versus each other. I think the veto list reflected that.
Mm-hmm. And the veto list, some say, kind of targeted local control, especially he's called out Austin quite a bit lately. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, so you have, under the last several years, you've had state government really aiming at the federal government, aiming at Obama. And now that they feel like they have a friend in the White House as opposed to a foe, it's where do they turn their attention to? And part of that is turning to, big cities, big Democratic cities, and local control. And that's, a natural place for them to shift their attention in the, argument for, this is the kind of culture, this is the kind of government that we want in our state.
Back when Governor Perry was the governor, I remember we had special session after special session after special session sometimes, and at least Governor Abbott gave the lawmakers a little bit of a break. What are we going to expect when we get back to the Capitol later next month?
Well, I would say two things about that. One, I wouldn't expect he necessarily did them a huge favor. I think there's actually a lot of grumbling among the legislators about the timing of this, that it's happening in the middle of the summer. It's happening in a period in which most of the legislatures go to one of the two big national legislative conferences, either NCSL, the National Conference of State Legislators, or ALEC, the more conservative version of that. So there's a lot of canceled flights and vacations going on right now. I think overall, the governor did something pretty strategic that I think initially people thought looked a little funny, but has turned out to really break his way by saying, here's a stuttered sequence where you have to pass this sunset bill, which I'm sure you discussed, that needs to get passed to continue some agencies. When you do that, then here's 19 other things, kind of a smorgasbord of mainly, though not entirely, conservative measures that I'm just going to drop right back in the middle of the legislature again, and after a contentious session, let you start fighting all over again, knowing full well that it's going to be incredibly difficult for the legislature to come to resolution on a lot of these issues. So politically, it's a pretty smart strategic move, if one that's, frankly, pretty ruthless.
And Andrea, we have just a few seconds left. I wanted to get your thoughts on Speaker Strauss. Seems to has talked about maybe putting other things on the special session that aren't on the call right now. Will he be successful?
Well, I don't. That's the big question, right? Because you have education, which is a big issue, particularly education funding, which the state Supreme Court had said, legislature, you should really do something about this. So it was a very interesting that it wasn't on the call, considering the House had at least a stopgap measure there. So, but I haven't heard much from the governor's office on whether or not he thinks that's a good idea too.
And only he can make that decision. All right, thank you both for being with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
A woman's death in a Texas jail leads to a new state law, how it could bring a major change in the way police officers interact with people suffering from mental illness. Just around the corner, a major change in the way police officers interact with people suffering from mental illness. It comes after a KXAN investigation revealed a severe lack of mental health training for law enforcement statewide. Starting September 1st, all future police cadets will be required to take 40 hours of mental health training for better de-escalation techniques and response to mental health crises. Governor Greg Abbott signed the measure into law on Thursday. It's part of a broader piece of legislation called the Sandra Bland Act, named for an African-American woman found dead in the Waller County Jail in 2015. After an arrest following a routine traffic stop and an argument with a state trooper, police say she committed suicide. The act also mandates that county jails divert people with mental health issues to treatment. You can check out our complete Fallen investigation right now in this story on the homepage of KXAN.com. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. Stay tuned for Meet the Press coming up at 9. I'm Josh Hinkle. Have a great day.